Hello my dear students, I Assistant Professor Prakati Shetty from Department of Microbiology, KJ Somaiya College. In the online lecture, in the last one, we have started the study for the herpes virus. Okay. So in the last online lecture, we saw the structure of the herpes virus, what is its genetic modification or the genetic properties. Then we saw the classification for the herpes virus. Okay, which is also can be called as the herpes viridae. Next we saw the epidemiology of the herpes simplex virus. In the online lecture, in this one we are focusing on the herpes simplex viruses. Okay, in that also we have two types, HSV1 and the HSV2 type. Okay, so main difference in the both the types are HSV1 will cause the upper body infection above the vest, and the HSV2 is responsible for causing the lower body infection, that is the lower, okay, below the vest. Then we saw the HSV epidemiology. Okay, in this one now we will start with the pathogenesis of this herpes simplex virus. Okay, so in the pathogenesis, so starting with the immunocompetent person, in the immunocompetent person, in the pathogenesis we'll see how it will transmit, okay, what is its route of the transmission, how it will develop the disease or the infection inside the host once it will get enter into the host cell. Okay, then what it does, okay, to spread the infection or causing the disease infection, that will come under the pathogenesis. Okay, pathogenesis, study of the pathogen. Okay, now we will start with the immunocompetent patient. In an immunocompetent person, the viral replication will be in the skin and the mucous membrane, which is followed by the replication and the spread in the neural tissues. Okay, then the viral infection will begin at the cutaneous portal of the entry as the oral activity, genital mucosa, ocular conjunctiva, or breaks in the keratinized epithelia. Once the HSV will enter into the immunocompetent person, the viral replication will be in the skin. Okay, in the last online lecture we studied what are the sources for their infection: skin, saliva, then the skin, saliva, the genital regions, right, the respiratory route. So with that, the viral replication in the skin and the mucous membrane, which is followed by replication and spread in the neural tissues. So that will spread the infection in the neural tissues. Okay, now the viral infection will more begin at the cutaneous site. Okay, now it will come to its actual site where it will show the symptoms. Okay, as the oral cavity, genital mucosa, depending on the type 1 or the type 2, it will be reached on that site. Okay, oral cavity, then genital mucosa, ocular conjunctiva, or breaks in the keratinized epithelia. There it will produce, or there it will increase its spread, there it will infect. Okay, then viral replicates locally, resulting in the death of the cell, and sometimes produces clinically apparent inflammatory responses as the characteristic herpetic vesicles and the ulcers, which is very common in the herpes disease, in the herpes infection. As I mentioned in the last lecture, if a person is infected with the herpes, it will get the ulcers or the boils. Okay, vesicles, boils mean the vesicles, the watery fluid, okay, which is very harmful and which is very contagious. Alright, and which is a characteristic for distinguishing the herpes infection. Now virus also can enter the nerve endings and spreads beyond the portal of the entry to the sensory ganglia by the intraneuronal transport. Okay, so it can also reach the nerve endings with the help of the intraneuronal transport, as it can reach the neural cells, right? So it can also reach the nerve endings. Alright, now the virus replicate in this some sensory neurons also and go back to the periphery. Okay, and in that place they released from the nerve ending and replicate again in the skin and the mucosal surfaces, which is their site of the replication or the infection. Okay, now the most HSV infection are the subclinical. Most of the HSV infection are the subclinical. Then in some infected neurons the infection is latent, right? As we saw in the last lecture, that is HSV can also be remain latent in a person body without any symptom. Okay, then intermittently virus begins to replicate at the certain period of time. After being latent, it will again start to replicate, right? Then they transported within the nerve fibers back to the cutaneous site for the initial infection, right? Then the recurrent infection may be symptomatic. Okay, the first one, that is the primary infection, can be latent and which is asymptomatic, whereas the recurrent infection can be symptomatic, right? If a person gets again the infection, then that will show the symptoms. Okay, then virus is shed at the site and can be transmitted to the susceptible individual, which means virus can be remain protected at the site of the infection, such as the skin and the saliva and the mucosal membranes, right? The mucocutaneous site. In this site the virus can remain protected. Okay, and which can be transmitted to susceptible individual. Susceptible means which are low in immunity or which are in the poverty areas, right? Or which is also which the persons can already suffering from any disease conditions. So there that persons are susceptible for this infection, right? So it can transmit to that persons also. Now what are the symptoms? Okay, what are the symptoms for or the clinical features we can also call for this disease, for this infection? Okay, so the HSV symptoms are the skin vesicles, right, which is very important and distinguished symptom in this virus, or this virus, right? It will produce skin vesicles and this shallow ulcers at the site of the infection. Okay, at the genital area it will also cause the vesicles, skin vesicles or the ulcers, which is very harmful and which is very contagious. Okay, on the oral cavity, on the lips, on the mouth, on the tongue, or inside the lips, the mucous membrane is there, right? In that also it can produce the skin vesicle or the ulcers, right? Then these are the small 2 to 4 millimeter vesicles that may be surrounded by an erythematous base, and which will turn after a few days into ulcers. Most infections are asymptomatic or unrecognized as small skin fissures. In skin fissures, in that condition also a person will get ulcer, but it can get confused or it can get misrecognized, okay, for this herpes disease. Alright, Most infections, as we saw, the infections can be symptomatic or asymptomatic. If the symptomatic disease is there, then what will be the symptoms? Majorly the ulcers and the skin vesicles, which are having the size 2 to 4 mm. Okay, then these vesicles are surrounded with the erythematous base, and which will after few days will develop into the ulcers. Okay, then the two important characteristic for this disease by which we can determine or we can identify, the first one is the eczema herpeticum. So what is this? It is a generalized eruption, okay, generalized eruption that is caused by the herpes infection in the children. Okay, the children who are already suffering from the eczema, and that is why the name is termed as the eczema herpeticum. Okay, which is resulting into the eruption. Okay, eruption caused by the herpes infection in the children which are suffering already from the eczema. Okay, then in this the crops of the vesicle appears in the eczema herpeticum. What is the visual symptom? Okay, the vesicles appears on the site of the infection, on the affected area. Okay, with the ulceration. After a few days it will again turn into the ulcers. Okay, and this is very distinguishable characteristic for the herpes in the children. Okay, the children who are suffering from eczema can get herpes, which will produce a symptom, okay, a visual characteristic called as the eczema herpeticum, which is the eruption caused by the herpes infection in the children which are suffering from the eczema. Okay, now similarly in the second one, that is the fever blisters or the herpes blisters, herpes febrilis. Okay, so what is this? These are the lesions, very typical lesions, okay, called as the fever blisters. Okay, so this are also caused by the viral reactivation in the febrile patients. Okay, if the virus will, again recurrent infection of this virus is responsible for this symptom. Okay, if the person is getting recurrent oftenly this infection, then that can be distinguished with the fever blister or the herpes febrilis. Okay, now the lesions in this herpes virus, for this herpes virus, that can be present on the buttocks in the infant on as the napkin rash. Okay, we all know the rashes for the cloth, right? The napkin rashes. So similar way, the lesions can also be present on the skin. Okay, and in the cutaneous infection site, the most common sites are the faces, and in the face, cheeks, chin, right, around the mouth or on the forehead, the lesions can be present there. Okay, cheeks, chin, then the mouth, surrounding the mouth. Okay, inside the oral cavity, right, inside the mouth, on the oral cavity, the lips, or on the forehead. So these are the site where these lesions can be present. Okay, and these are the symptoms or the clinical features for the HSV disease. Okay, Now we will see what is the pathogenesis for this virus. Now in the pathogenesis, okay, we saw pathogenesis in the last online lecture, right? So we will directly come into the laboratory diagnosis. So as we all know, what are the steps of this testing, right? If we are providing our sample to the certain pathology lab or the microbiology lab, so they will have the various steps for proceeding to the final result, right? So what are the steps? Steps such as the taking the specimen, then isolating the virus, then culturing that virus, and then check for the presence or absence for that virus, right? So in that also we will start with the specimen, right? So in the laboratory diagnosis, first is the specimen. Specimen can be from the vesical fluid, skin swabs, saliva, right? Saliva content. Then corneal scrapings. In the cornea is the important point. This HSV can also infect the eye, the cornea of the eye. Okay. So the corneal scrapings can also be taken as the specimen for this infection, for the testing, okay? Or the CSF fluid, cerebrospinal fluid, or the brain biopsy or autopsy can be used as a specimen for testing or for checking the presence of this virus, okay? Now second step is what? First, now we have the specimen with us, right? Now what we will do? We will observe under the microscope, okay? We observe the specimen for any abnormalities are there or not, and if the abnormalities are there, then we will proceed that sample for further test, okay? Now in the microscopy, we are having the different types, different methods of making the smear. So first one is which? The T-Zhang smear. Okay, the T-Zhang smear is very rapid method, okay, and which is more sensitive, the fairly enough sensitive and inexpensive, okay. Now in this, what steps are there to make the smears? The smears are made from the lesions, right? Preferably from the specimen sample, okay. And in that also is especially the smear is made for the lesions, okay. If the sample is from lesions, if the lesions are present on the skin, right, then from there the lesions are taken, the fluid in the lesions are used to prepare the smear. Now this sample is stained with the aqueous solution, okay, 1% aqueous solution of the toluidine blue for 15 seconds, and then that will observed for the multinucleated giant cells with the faceted nuclei and the homogeneously stained, okay, homogeneously stained the ground glass, okay, and that is called as the T-Zhang cells. So what are the T-Zhang cells? That are the giant cells, the large cells which is having the faceted nuclei, okay, the clear enough nuclei, and the homogeneously stained, equally stained chromatin, okay, ground glass. These cells are called as the T-Zhang cells, and we are observing these cells, and that is why the smear is called as the T-Zhang smear. It's a very rapid method, right? So in this method, what we require? We just require 1% aqueous toluidine. Okay, we have toluidine blue, and we have to stain our slide using this 1% aqueous toluidine blue for 15 seconds, and then we have to observe for what? T-Zhang cells. What are the T-Zhang cells? These are the multinucleated giant cells, Okay, which means we will observe a giant cell with the multiple nucleus in it. Okay, and the homogeneously stained chromatin, okay, which is equally stained. So that's are called as the T-Zang cells. All right, so that will indicate the positive result for our test and positive signal for proceeding further in the laboratory diagnosis. So then next type of the microscopy can be the Gemesa stained smear. Okay, so what will be observed in this smear? We will observe for the intranuclear inclusion bodies, intranuclear type A inclusion bodies, okay, in this smears. Then the proteins, that is the herpes virus antigen, that can be observed, that can be detected by the lesions, from the lesions, right? As we have taken the sample, the lesion sample, right, for the first one for the T-Zang smear. So similar way we can use that sample also to determine the antigens. Okay, and in that we can observe under the electron microscope. Okay, then we can also observe under the we can also observe using the fluorescent antibody technique, right? So it is very rapid, it is again very rapid test, fluorescent antibody technique, right? In that we are having the antibody incorporated plate, right? And on that it is very similar to the ELISA. Okay, this method is similar to the ELISA. In that also antigen antibody reaction will take place, and then again we will add the antibody which having the fluorescent enzyme with it. Okay, which will produce the fluorescence when the antigen antibody complex will form. Okay, so that's how we can determine the antigens, herpes virus antigens. Okay, now we have completed our second step, that is the microscopy. First we will collect the specimen, right? Then we will see the abnormalities in the specimen. Okay, now say if we got any abnormalities in the specimen, the positive result for the proceeding. So now we will proceed with the third step, that is we will isolate that virus. Okay, now we know that virus is present in our sample, so next step will be to isolate that virus. Okay, now how we will isolate that virus? We will use the tissue culture. Okay, the tissue culture is used for the isolation. Virus can't be isolated on our general media, right? Because virus requires host cell, human cells, for its multiplication, and that's why in the tissue culture which cells are used, the human diploid fibroblast are used for the virus isolation. Okay, then the typical cytopathic changes will observed between 24 to 48 hours of the incubation. Okay, now what we have to do? We have to isolate the virus. How we will isolate the virus? We will tissue culture the virus using the human diploid fibroblast. Right, on this tissue virus will multiply, virus will grow, and that will produce the cytopathic changes between the 28 to 48 hours of the incubation. Then along with that we can also check the drug susceptibility in this tissue culture only. So what is the main characteristic? How we identify the growth of the virus? By the cytopathic changes, okay, in our tissue culture. Now we have successfully isolated the virus, okay, from the specimen. Now what will be the fourth step? Fourth step will be the serology. Serology means the blood test, right? the antigen antibody test. So in that also the ELISA plays the very important role. Okay. So in ELISA, in this type, we will detect the antibodies. Okay. And which is very important in determining the primary infection for the herpes. The ELISA plays very important role, crucial role in detecting the primary infection. Why? Because if the person having the primary infection of the herpes, it will produce the antibodies against that, and that antibodies we can determine using the ELISA. Okay. Then along with the ELISA, we can use the neutralization test or the complement fixation test. Okay. Now fifth one, after we have done with the serological test, right? Say we have done the ELISA. Okay. So now we will use the fifth one, that is the PCR. Okay. PCR can also be used, and nowadays the PCR's used has been increased greatly for the diagnosis, because PCR is very specific, very rapid test, right? And it gives the very proper and the accurate result. Okay. Then now we have checked, we have isolated that virus, and now we know that that virus is herpes virus only. Okay. How we know, how we confirm? By using the serological test and by using the PCR test, right? In the PCR what will do? It will polymerize, right? It will polymerize the DNA of that virus, and by that we can determine the presence of that, the confirmation of that virus, right? And now we are confirmed that the person specimen having this virus only. Now what we will do? We will prescribe the medications for that virus, for that disease, right? Now sixth one therefore is the chemotherapy, that is the medications. Now what types of drugs can be used? So in the eye and the skin infections, the idoxyuridine can be used. For systematic infection, the aciclovir and the vidarabine can be used. For effective oral agents, that is the oral infections, valacyclovir and the famiciclovir. Okay. And if the above mentioned drugs, if these mentioned drugs are getting resistant for that virus infection, then again we can use more effective drug, which is called as the foscarnet drug. Okay, foscarnet drug, which is very independent for the viral thymine kinase. Okay, this, due to this thymine kinase, the drugs are getting resistant. Virus is getting resistant for the drugs, right? Drugs are no more susceptible. But if we used the foscarnet drug, then that will be effective. Why? Because that is very important, independent of this activity of the viral thymine kinase. Okay. So these are the drugs for this infection. For the treatment, now we have studied the laboratory diagnosis, right? We have studied each step in the laboratory diagnosis. After the laboratory diagnosis, okay, yes, the one more point here in the drugs, in the idoxyuridine, that is, which is used in the eye and the skin infection, is one of the first clinically successful antiviral agents. Okay, the idoxyuridine is the first discovered successful clinical antiviral agents. Okay, So in this online lecture, we saw the clinical features, that is the symptoms of the herpes virus, right? Then we saw the pathogenesis of this herpes virus, right? How it will become infective, how it will transmit its infection at the site of the infection, right? Once it will get entry, one is enters into the host in the person's body, then by which routes, by which steps the infection will spread. So that we saw, right? Now then we saw the pathogenicity. Okay. Then we saw the clinical features or the symptoms for this HSV virus disease, herpes virus, right? Herpes disease. Then we saw the laboratory diagnosis. Okay. In the laboratory diagnosis, we saw each step, and each step how we have to proceed. Okay, how we proceed in the laboratory diagnosis, right? Then we saw what are the drugs that can be used to treat this infection. Okay, I hope you understood this online lecture. If you have any doubt regarding this, please ask in the comment section. Thank you for watching.